Yum yum!
Hello, Lukasz Pazera here. In this video, I'd like to show you two ACS3 features which I think demonstrate well why ACS3 can be considered a rigging platform rather than a fixed solution. And those two features are naming schemes and color schemes. So let's start from the naming schemes first. I'm going to unfold the piece of the ACS3 rig hierarchy, and you can see that all the items are quite cleanly named. And all those names are generated automatically by ACS3 based on the defined naming scheme. And there are few components to each item name. So in this naming scheme is very similar to the ACS2 one. And so at the beginning we've got the rig name or the character name, then we've got the token that says which side the item is on, then we've got the module name, finally the item name, and the type postfix that says whether an item is a guide or a controller or a plug or a bind locator, and so on. When I change various components of the naming scheme, the names for the affected items will be regenerated on the fly. So let's take a look at that. If I select the rig root item, it's got some properties now in the item properties. And the first property here is the name of the rig. So if I change it to, let's say, quad, you will see that all the item names have changed their character or rig prefix to quad. I can do the same thing for the module. So if I select the root item of the module, it also has its own tab in properties now, and one of the properties here is name. So if I change it to, let's say, just leg, you will see that this particular token has changed in all the items belonging to the module. So it says now leg here. So let's go back and do back leg again. And finally, if I select an individual item, like a main controller, for example, and go to the rig tab, it also has the name property. If I change this to, let's say, make it, I don't know, okay, leg main, you see that just this part of the name has changed. So when you actually name items in ACS3, you really just define this name, and the rest, the full name, gets generated based on the actual item name, and then all the various other components like the module name or the side or the rig name. Now I can change the entire naming scheme, and this is the property of the rig right there, and I have a standard naming scheme right now, and if I change it to alternate, you will see that the entire way in which the names are generated changes. So now, for example, the type of the item is actually before the side rather than being added as a postfix, and also all the tokens they use different strings. So here I'm gonna go back to the standard. The contents of the naming scheme pop-up is dynamic, which means that you can actually register more or more naming schemes, custom schemes that you implement using Python. And here is an example of, so this is the source code for defining the standard naming scheme. So as you can see, it's not really that much work. You only really need to define the order in which various tokens are build the full item name, and then you define also those particular tokens like item types and how is the left side being marked, and the string for the right side, and so on. Let's move on to the color schemes now. So again, I'm going to select the root item of the entire rig, and one of the properties here is the color scheme. Right now it's set to the red-blue standard. So let's see what happens if I choose red-blue dark. So this is the same color scheme, but just with darker colors. So maybe you've got your character in a color or background in such a color that it might be easier with darker controls. You can quickly switch to such scheme, or you can switch to the red-blue vivid, with much stronger vivid colors if that's your preference. Finally, if you'd rather have your left side colored green rather than blue, then you can you can change it as well. Then we've got the dark variation of this one. And if you, for something completely different, this is like more monochromatic, just yellow color scheme. So those color schemes, these color schemes, much like the naming schemes, they are, you can define them, implement them using Python and register with the system, and then they will show up in this pop-up. And the way it works is basically, instead of defining the color directly for each item, you actually go into the properties, and there is the item color property here, and here you can choose a color from. Let me actually just quickly go to the maybe red, blue, vivid, and try the same. So if I go here and click the color, you can see here's my all my choices in this color scheme. Now here's the entire palette, and yeah, I can choose the color from here. Those three colors are, they basically, what they do is they make it that the item has a different color based on which side it is on. So if it's on the right, it will have this color, then on center different, and different on the left side. Those with just single color will have the same color no matter which side they are on. So here's like how I can quickly change from the controller wireframe to controller tree color, for example. And I think that's it for these two features. Thank you for watching.
Yum, yum!